Hello, hi. Welcome back. You're watching Malaysia, and today we're going to interview half German, half Malay. He is currently living and working in the United States. So, without further ado, let's get started. Hi, thank you for participating. Can you tell me a little bit of your background?
Yeah, my name's Amir. I'm 27 years old. I live in California, but I'm half Malay, half German. So right now I'm over in the States working as a business development associate for a biotech company. So we focus on genetics. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. So, you say you're half.
Yeah, half German, half Malay.
So, which one of your parents is which?
Yeah, my mom's actually Malay, and my dad's from Munich, Germany. So I was born and raised there. And it's a pretty interesting story, actually. My parents, they met when they were in Indonesia.
I see.
And they were both on a company retreat. Back then, apparently companies, they used to pay for vacations. They don't let us do that anymore.
Right.
But yeah, so they met there. My dad was working in Taiwan at the time. And, I guess they just kicked it off. And then, sooner rather than later, I was born.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool to know. So right now you say you're living in the United States, right? So were you born in Germany, or can you elaborate a little bit more? Have you lived in Malaysia, Germany, and the US? And if yes, when?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So it's a long story. I was born in Malaysia. I lived here for a few years when I was very young. And as I may have mentioned earlier, my dad was working in Taiwan when I was born. So, my first few years here, I was constantly flying back and forth. I think the first time I went on a plane, I think I was less than a year old. So it's pretty early for someone to fly, I think. So since then, moved to Taiwan and then actually lived in Australia from age, I think it was from 3 to 8. So a few years. And from there, I moved to Germany for a couple years.
Right.
And then I moved to the US after that. So I've been living in the US since 2013.
I see. So which school did you go to? Being raised in a mixed culture at home, did you go to like Malay school a little bit, or school in the US or Germany? Can you elaborate about that?
Yeah, actually, it's really interesting. When I was young, it was more of a language reason as to why I went to different schools. Initially, English and Malay were kind of my first languages. Since my mom speaks Malay, obviously she's at home more than my dad is. So I was able to pick that up really quickly along with English. But, as I grew a little bit older and I was supposed to start kindergarten,
Right.
first grade, second grade, my dad decided, I need to work on my German. So he sent me to an international school
Right.
from preschool, kindergarten age, all the way to 4th, 5th grade.
Right.
So I actually went to German school in the beginning. And then when I moved to the US, that's when my dad asked me if I wanted to stay in a German school or continue with like an American school.
Right.
I still don't know what choice I should have made. I ended up choosing an American school. So local, because my brother, he always went to a local school, and I thought that was kind of cool for whatever reason, because we always felt like we were internationals and foreigners in whatever countries we were in.
Right.
So what was really interesting was, at the time I was like, okay, I really want to be a local.
Right.
And that's kind of when I decided, okay, let me just try out this like American school.
Right.
And this is in the US, right? So, like I said, I feel like maybe it would have been funner to stay at an international school because I did enjoy that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. How often have you visited Malaysia?
I actually try to come back every year. I have family out here in Malaysia. So at least once a year for a few weeks, I try and come back. Unfortunately, because of COVID, right? Last time I came back was 2019, so a few years ago. And I really did miss Malaysia. I did feel impacted. All my family is here. It does feel like a big part of home for me. So I do get very excited whenever I get the chance to fly back.
Right.
But of course, the last few years was a little bit unfortunate. So I'm really glad to be back now for sure.
Right. Yeah, welcome back.
Thank you.
So for this time, you're back to Malaysia for how long, and what is it for? Is this just for visiting relatives or anything specific?
Yeah, I'm only back for 2 weeks this time. So I'm just in between some work positions right now. So I got a little bit of time off.
Right.
So I actually booked my flight maybe 2 days before my actual flight.
Really?
Very last minute decision. The main reason was, of course, to visit family. My brother, he recently got a new child. So I have one niece and one nephew now.
Right.
Back in Ipoh. So I came back. He's about 6 months old now. So I
Right.
just wanted to come back, kind of, get to know the family a little bit more, of course.
Right.
Be a good uncle, so to speak.
Right.
But yeah, and of course, the other big component is visiting my friends that are out here too. Just
Right.
hanging out, having a
Right.
good time.
All right. Sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
So as compared to Malaysia, because you say you live in the United States, right? So how often have you gone back to Germany, and when was the last time you went back to Germany?
Yeah, I'll start with the last time. Last time I went back to Germany was actually pretty recently, in September last year. Was lucky enough to do a little bit of a Euro tour as well. So I went to Germany first. My grandma lives there and a few other family members live there. So, I visited my family first. spent a few weeks there, and then I did like a couple weeks, went to Paris, Barcelona, Italy, kind of just the normal Euro tour. But again, it's a similar thing with Malaysia. I do like to try and go back once a year if I can, just because it's nice to kind of keep in touch physically and be there, in a better way that's not virtual, so to speak, right? So you can't really connect with your family members through phone calls or FaceTime for forever, right? So it's really important for me to actually physically come home to these different, Malaysia and Germany specifically, because that's kind of where my family is really located around the world.
Okay. All right. So how is it like living in a different country, in the United States or Germany? I assume it's a lot different than Malaysia, but can you elaborate more? What have you noticed so far?
Yeah, I'll be honest, it's really one of those things that you have to experience to really understand properly. Other than just the basics, I can tell you differences in, well, one obvious thing is the side of the street we drive on, cultural differences, infrastructural differences, kind of even just the way we hang out with friends and stuff here. What I like about Malaysia is really the hangout culture and the chill culture that exists here. So a lot of people, I'm assuming it's due to the hot weather, prefer to hang out at night. So a lot of the shops, especially things to do and places to eat, are open much longer over here. Back in Germany, even the United States, most of the places to eat, they probably won't let you in after 9:30 anymore, because kitchen will be closed by then. Shops will close by 10. I used to live in a smaller town in Davis, California, where I went to school for college. And, I swear to you, some of the shops there by 8 p.m., nothing left. So that's honestly one of my favorite parts here in Malaysia. Some of the big differences I can tell. But yeah, obviously a lot of good sides and bad sides to both places and to all places around the world.
Right. So those are the stuff that you like about Malaysia, right? As compared to Germany and the US, anything that you feel like Malaysia can improve on?
Yeah, one of the big things, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that thinks this, is infrastructure can be something that can be really improved in Malaysia. And what I mean by that is, road quality, even, pedestrian crossing paths, bike paths, right? Infrastructure as in general quality of roads, public transport. Public transport's not that bad in Malaysia, but it's still something that can be improved. If you went to Germany, for example, in Munich, it's apparently one of the better public transport systems in Europe, if not the world. And it's so well built that you really don't need a car if you lived in Munich.
Wow.
So that's another, just going back to your other question earlier, is one of the big differences in a European country is that the cities are what's called very walkable. Right. So you can get everywhere literally on foot. If you can't walk there, there's always going to be a bus or a train or a tram, right? Something that will get you to where you need to be without inconveniencing yourself with driving.
Right. Okay. Do you have a lot of friends who are mixed as well?
With my particular mixture, not so much with the Malay and German, but of course, living in the US, there's a few, Malay and American mixed group of friends that I have over there. A little bit of a different background, of course, them being born in the US and not really returning back to Malaysia very often, maybe every 5-6 years. So it's not, not as common to come back here. Again, going back to Malay and German, I know only one other person, actually, ironically, in Germany that's the same exact race as me. So it's pretty interesting kind of just moving around the world and not really, being able to find someone that you relate to exactly racial wise. It's kind of just floating around in that way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So follow up to that question, there are a lot of mixed races in Malaysia, for example. So I assume the experiences of different mixtures of the races will be different from each other. For example, you are a mix of Malay and German. Would it be different than, for example, a person who is half Malay and maybe half American? What's your opinion about that?
Just anecdotally speaking, from my own experience, as well as what I've heard from other people that are mixed, really, I think the big difference is how big of a mixture it is. So between the two biggest mixtures are obviously Asian and white. Right? So Malaysian, German, for example, Malaysian American. With those, you tend to have about the same type of experience, right? Because being in Malaysia, for instance, people will see you, be like, oh, it's a mixed white guy or something, right? Versus if it's, someone that's mixed Malay and Chinese or something, or Malay and maybe even Indian, right? Japanese, so on and so forth. Of course, they're still kind of unique in the aspect that they're mixed, especially living in Malaysia, coming from those different countries. But again, I think there's just a little bit of a cultural difference in how Malaysians see Westerners, so to speak, right? Where Westerners are much more foreign than other Asians that tend to come to Malaysia, right?
So there are a lot of mixed races in the US, just like in Malaysia. Can you tell the differences of the mixed races in the United States and Malaysia?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. From what I understand, America has this what they call like a melting pot theory, right? And that's when all these different races have come into the country from all around the world. And this is kind of a big part of American history, that it's a country formed by immigrants, so to speak, right? And because of that, a lot of the races are very assimilated, right? Meaning, although, obviously we may all look different, culturally we're all the same, right? We'll eat the same foods. I grew up with, in my school, people that were like half Koreans, for example, or, half black, half white and another, kind of like Japanese or Asian or something, right?
Right.
So from there, although we're all these different races living in America, we'll all kind of we'll have the same accents, for example. Right. We'll all speak English in the same way, and we all kind of do the same things. Right. Versus in Malaysia, I feel like there's a lot of that as well, a lot of kind of this melting pot. Everyone's kind of like, sharing a similar culture. But I still think there's a lot of division in terms of, if you are, if you're mixed or if you're a certain race here in Malaysia, there may be some cultural expectations and social behaviors that you are expected to have, right? Because that's just the way that, Malaysia is, right? And that's, just to answer your question, one of the bigger differences between Malaysia and the US is that there's less of a social construct and a social pressure for you to act or behave a certain way because of your race.
Right, I agree. In terms of personality, if you can choose one, which one are you the most? Between Malay, German, and American, in terms of personality-wise, which one would you choose?
That's a good question too. I don't think you can choose a personality. It's something that you kind of just, grow with or adopt in a way. Obviously, as you can tell from my accent, I identify pretty heavily with, having a strong American personality. Also, living there for such a long time. Right. But, that just goes back to this whole idea of like being mixed, right? And that, it may be a little bit difficult for some people who aren't mixed to kind of relate to that the personality can actually be very fluid in who you are if you're mixed, right? Because especially depending on which friend group you're hanging out with. If I'm hanging out with like a pure like Malaysian or Malay friend group, right? Obviously kind of my personality adapts a little bit more just to kind of be more socially comfortable, right? Versus when I'm with German, obviously the language even changes, right? So when your language changes, in my opinion, you kind of adopt a little bit of a different personality with that language as well. The way you speak, what you say, right, kind of changes with the language you speak. So again, just to answer that, yeah, my personality I feel is very fluid, especially depending on, who I'm with or where I am, even what language I'm speaking at the time.
Okay. Do you think there is some prejudice towards your race? Do you have any negative experience or anything you want to share about that?
There's nothing negative per se, no prejudices. I wouldn't call them any negative experiences, but this goes on both sides of whether I'm visiting Germany or Malaysia. It's very interesting because being mixed, I'm neither full Malay or full German. So when I go to Malaysia, I'm seen as like German, right? When I go to Germany, I'm seen as like Malay or Asian, right? So it's very interesting because, I don't really, I've never, had any like racial issues or prejudice due to that. But it's definitely something that, people will kind of like bring up, maybe even in a friendly way, like, or what kind of foods you like. People won't expect me to like Malay food, for example, or to enjoy, eating the local foods here, because they think that, okay, I'm, Western or something. When I go to Germany, similar thing, they might not think that I'm, accustomed to the German traditions because I'm Malay, right? So if you see what I'm saying here, it's kind of, although there's the best of both worlds, at the same time, you're not fully one nor fully the other.
That's a good answer. This is a two-part. The first part of the question is that what are the pros and cons of being half, if you can answer that?
Yeah, just at the top of my head, that's actually a pretty interesting question. We'll start with the pros. Really the worldview that you get, kind of the perspective you have when you walk in the world, is very unique as a mixed race person, right? And that's very important when you want to be empathetic and you want to see things from other people's point of view, walk, in someone else's shoes. Being able to see the world in different perspectives, from different cultural perspectives and point of views, that's very important. So I think that's one of the biggest pros that I could come up with here on the spot.
Right.
In terms of the cons, really, I think it would have to go back to what I was saying earlier. It's just a personal pet peeve a little bit,
Right.
where, because of my mixed race,
Right.
people don't think that I'm, like Malay, genuinely, for example.
Right.
Surprisingly, this doesn't happen as much in Germany. Like, I think because Germany does have a lot of people who are mixed as well, that were kind of like born and raised in Germany,
Right.
that happen to be mixed and very like German, so to speak. But yeah, that's one of those things that's very interesting. It just is a little bit of an uncomfortable experience when you have to explain like why you like Malay food,
Right.
because you just grew up with it, right? And you're used to it.
Right.
It's hard to explain, even as someone that, is fully Malay, for example, and born in Malaysia, raised in Malaysia. Imagine having to explain why you like Malay food,
Yeah.
right? Or Malaysian
Yeah.
food. It's kind of like there's no answer to that, right?
Yeah.
So
You just do.
you just do. Yeah.
The second part of the question is that, are you happy being half?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's no other choice. So even if I'm not happy, there's nothing I can do. But I'm definitely happy. I feel like realistically, there's no advantages to it. I mean, to be fair, right? Like, there's ways to make use of your mixed race in terms of, if you want to have a interesting like conversation starter or something, or be a little bit more interesting in a social setting, right? Have something to talk about. But that's really because of the experiences that you have being mixed race, right? It's not really innate that, okay, because you're mixed, that you have these certain qualities or features. It's really your upbringing, because specifically for me, I grew up in a mixed cultural household, right? So that gives me a different experience and a little bit of a unique experience that when I interact with people is a little bit, for me, is very interesting. So I think that's one of the big advantages, because I feel like I'm a very social person.
Right.
So I like to speak with people. I like to learn about other people as well. So if there's something that I can contribute for them to maybe learn about a little bit as well,
Right.
it's always a little bit easier for me, because I probably can tell them something they haven't heard about before, right?
Right. Sweet. What are your future plans? Would you rather go back to the United States, or do you plan to stay in Malaysia at any time, or back to Germany or any other countries?
Yeah, actually, I haven't written out my future plans on a drawing board or anything yet. It's all kind of just in the mind right now. But something I'd like to vision myself doing, within the extended future, kind of not long range future, but kind of mid range future. I definitely like to be working in America for a little bit longer, kind of just get some really good experience there. The work culture in America is very nice. It's also very challenging. So the experiences you get there are very beneficial for your career in the future. And in terms of kind of relocation, it's really depending on kind of where my career brings me. I would like to work in Germany for a while as well. But I think one of the places I'd really like to end up is actually Malaysia, believe it or not. I think it kind of goes back to what I was relating very early on, was that Malaysia is really, I feel like, is my home, essentially. So one day I really hope to be able to relocate back here, in a stable fashion, in a very smooth fashion. So we'll see how that goes.
All right. How many languages do you speak?
I speak 3 fluently, like with full professional and actually native fluency: English, Malay, and German. But obviously from schooling and just from self-studies, I've studied a little bit of Spanish and French.
Right.
And right now, actually, my goal is to learn some Arabic as well. I feel like that's a good next move for me,
Right.
just practically speaking. But yeah, Malay, English, German, kind of the 3 languages I grew up with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So at home, what language do you guys use the most?
Actually, so we speak English at home mainly. It's very easy, obviously, for my parents. They speak English with each other. My dad can speak a little bit of Malay. My mom can speak a little bit of German. But I think my dad was telling me this a long time ago, was that it was decided, by him as the family, as the head of the household, that it would be an English-speaking household, right? To where obviously I still speak Malay with my mom.
Yeah.
But he would like it that we would all speak English, because it's a very important language internationally, right? And the prime example is in my own household, right? It's the language that my parents can communicate in, right? Even coming from 2 different sides of the world, it's very important that they both knew English, so that they could, meet each other and know each other. So that's why, my dad kind of wanted to keep the family multilingual, keep English as a primary one, because it's, almost inarguably one of the more important languages in the world, professionally and socially. Practice is really the biggest part of it. Obviously, I did go to school for German, the international school, and that's where I really picked up a lot of the fluency as well. But language, if you want to be fluent at it, is something you have to speak with, you have to use every day. and try to speak with native speakers.
Right.
That's one of the best ways to really learn a language, and not just learn it, but also speak it with fluency and proper pronunciation.
Right.
It's really just like I was saying, practice and be speaking with the right type of people that will be able to teach you that
Right.
type of language.
Okay. For my viewers, can you introduce yourself in Malay and German language? Just a quick summary would do.
Apa khabar? Nama saya Amiruddin, but you can just call me Amir. And in German, hallo, mein Name ist Amir. Wie geht's? Und es ist sehr schön, Sie kennenzulernen. I just said it's very nice to meet you, and it's a great conversation to have. Obviously, this is the kind of the vibe I've gotten in Malaysia. Is everyone's very friendly, such as yourself. So it's really cool environment out here. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope you have a great time for the remaining of your stay in Malaysia.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
How was the video? I hope you liked it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next one.